I've titled this Doing Business in 2018, The Good, the Bad, and the Opportunities. And that, that's my general theme for 2018. And, these themes arrive on you somehow because, so I see a lot of good. I see quite some bad as well. So I want you to have a balanced view so you can discern the noise and separate the good from the bad. But at the end of the day, the focus must be on the opportunities, and that's why I've adopted that theme. So what's good? I'm going to breeze through this. I have 40 minutes. The presentation is a lot more than 40 minutes, but because I'm going to let you have it, I thought I should keep the information in there. But I'm going to breeze through this. So the good is, one, oil prices, you know about that. And even this slide is outdated. It's over $70 now, you know that. This is the OPEC basket, this is the Brent crude, and they're both around $70 per barrel. But although the trajectory upwards has been on for some time, so, this is the second thing that is good. Recession is over. You can see the recession in red. 5 quarters from 2016 and the first quarter of 2017. And of course, the recessions are not good because they make people lose jobs, they reduce corporate performance. So it's a good thing that it's over, even though growth is still modest. And as you see later, growth is still not broad. But we'll talk about that when we look at the bad. And the projections for 2018 are not bad either. I have multiple sources there. So that's the government's Economic Recovery and Growth Plan, which they launched in February last year, which projected 4.8 growth for 2018. That is clearly unrealistic today. So that tells you that we haven't implemented the ERGP. Even the 2.19 of 2017, we only modestly implemented the program, so the results are not showing. But the IMF was very well on track. Last year with their 0.8% projection, and this year I suspect they'll be closer to reality too, with their almost 2% projection. The budget for 2018 of the federal government thinks the year will grow at 3.5, the World Bank 2.5, the United Nations Department of Economic and Social Affairs 2.1. So my range, just looking at that, an informed range would be somewhere between 2% and 3.5% growth in 2018. Again, that's not bad considering where we're coming from, a recession. And then what's good, some of you may have heard that the World Bank in its Doing Business report classified Nigeria as one of the top 10 improvers in doing business. Now, I'm sure most of you will say we don't agree with them, and you would have your point. But the point is their methodology is to reward countries for reforms, specific reforms. You get your marks. It's like a marking scheme. You've done the reform, you get the mark. When the reform has effect on the consumer of regulatory affairs and business, it's a different question. But we did some reforms, they gave us the marks. I'll balance this out when we look at what's bad with the Global Competitiveness Index, which tells a story you will probably agree with. And as a consequence of that, we moved 24 places based on the doing business reforms that the government is doing. So that's not bad. External reserves. Again, this is the last available data, even though the central bank has told us that they've cost $40 billion. So this is why we have stability in our exchange rates. This is why we have convergence of rates and narrowing of that margin, which was as high as 200 naira to the dollar at a point. But now we have a strong reserves buffer. Of course, this is all down to oil prices, which we saw earlier. But it's good all the same, and this is the change in reserves. And you can see that as compared to the earlier part of the graph, in recent times, there's been a strong accretion to reserves. So again, oil prices is the driver. And the convergence. So now we have a margin of about 60 naira within the rates, between the CBN's notional 305 and the public markets. So there's been significant convergence. Like I said, that was as high as 200 naira at a point when the CBN kept to its 300 and the markets were over 500. And then there's the suggestion from the Purchasing Managers Index, the PMI, that growth should be better. If you look at manufacturing PMI, it gives us a trend that things is recovering because, of course, purchasing decisions are a leading indicator to future growth. Because if purchasing managers are buying because they are selling, because they think there will be more sales, because their inventory is down, all of that is suggestive of improved economic outlook. And if you look at that, all of these suggestions, production level, new orders, supplies, delivery time, employment in manufacturing, and raw materials inventory all suggest that growth should be better in 2018. And if you also look at the non-manufacturing PMI, it gives the same impression. So inflation is also down, which is good. Anything I give here, I'll give the balancing argument when we look at what's bad, so you'll have a complete view. So inflation is down, and some may already know what the balancing argument is for inflation being down. But we've even gone to 15.3 in the last data, which is not reflected here. And capital markets are up as well. Nigeria was one of the best capital markets in the world in 2017, 42% growth. Some stocks, e.g. First Bank, tripled in value in the course of the year. But as a whole, the market grew 42%, while most of us did not notice. The foreign investors, of course, took most of that value. So capital markets are good. So, summary, oil prices are good, the recession is over, capital markets are up, purchasing managers index is suggestive of future growth, inflation as a combined data figure is down, and therefore, and of course foreign reserves are significantly up. Indeed, foreign reserves has essentially doubled in the last 1 year. And we have been losing $1 billion every month. So I used to joke that we will have zero reserves in 22 months. Of course, that's when the CBN clamped down. It's good fortune, God-given from oil prices, that we're at $40 billion today. Now, what's bad? So I started with oil prices as good because it makes the country's finances stronger. Well, the flip side of oil prices is that we have this subsidy program in which from one pocket we get more income from the sale of crude oil, and then we dissipate or distribute the profits to our people through cheap subsidized petrol. So as oil prices have risen, we now have a problem at the fuel stations. Of course, it's also economically inefficient, as queuing is inefficient. And what's still, at this point in time, we don't have a subsidy in the budget. We've not had since 2016, when oil prices went down. So what we have essentially is, you may argue, an illegal and unconstitutional and probably prone to corruption subsidy being administered by one man at the NNPC. It's the worst possible situation. He just tells us this is how much we spent on the subsidy and just takes the money out of the money for the sale of crude oil that the NNPC has. So that's bad. GDP, recession is over, but when you look at per capita income, you see that Nigerians are getting poorer. So that's the combined effect of recession, devaluation, inflation. Inflation takes 15% of your money. Devaluation took maybe 40% of your salary. And recession crashed the whole economy. So the impact in nominal and real terms in dollar values is that we are all poorer, and our economy as a whole is much smaller than it was. The other point about the recovery from the recession, which many Nigerians are blissfully ignorant or unaware of, unfortunately, is that the recovery is all about oil prices and production. If you look at this is the oil sector. The output falling because of militancy, because of recession, because of oil thefts, because of low investment. In Q2, it flipped because of oil prices and oil production, because there's peace in the Niger Delta. Once it flipped, we had an end to the recession. The minus 16% of oil became 3.53, and that led us marginally over the line. In the second quarter, as oil prices rose to $60 per barrel, you had 25% growth, and our recession ending is exclusively about oil sector performance, because in the third quarter, non-oil economy actually went back into recession, minus 0.76. So as of Q3 2017, and probably as of in the fourth quarter, which is not yet out, we know that oil sector performance will continue to be strong because oil prices even went to $70 and there were no disruptions to production. At best, non-oil would marginally cross out of recession, at best. So when they say the Nigerian is out of recession, the more accurate statement to make is that 11% of the Nigerian economy is out of recession. And 90% is still in recession, contracted by 0.76 as of the last available data in Q3. And this is the rest of the economy that is still in recession. So this is the one that is out of recession. This is, okay, let me balance it. Okay, to balance it, let me show this slide. So actually, three sectors are not in recession in Nigeria: oil, utilities, agriculture. Every other thing is either marginally growing or still in recession. So this is agriculture, which is 3.06. Now let me also qualify agriculture sector growth, which is 3.06. That growth rate of agriculture has declined quarter on quarter for the last 5 quarters to get to that 3.06. So it started from 4.58, 4.5, 4.3, 4.8, 3.5, before it ended in the last 2 quarters at 3.01 and 3.06. So even the agriculture sector is not good news. That is 3%, because that's a consistent reduction in the agriculture sector. Now I get shocks from people when I say this, because that's contrary to what you have been told. That's contrary to what you've been told, you know. But you have a responsibility as business people to separate, to find out the truth for yourself. Because this data is not private data, it's online. National Bureau of Statistics, Government of Nigeria. It's not Agbaje that released the data. It's the government's official data. And if you go online and you'll see that the agri sector growth has declined every quarter for 5 quarters. And so you have agriculture, which is 3.06. This is the one, like I said, that accounts for our exit from recovery. This is utilities, which is power and water mostly. But the growth is due to power in Q2 and Q3. And most people validate that from our sampling. So most people got increased electricity output in Q2 and Q3. It may not be so in Q4 and Q1 2018, but in Q2 and Q3, there's no doubt that there was a significant increase in electricity generation. Every other sector, and let's run through them. I had to remove all the detailed sector aspects because I don't have the time for that. But this is solid minerals going at 0.92. It's both too small and the growth rate too marginal to make a difference. The sector is here. There's a line here that you cannot see. So again, as I was presenting this one boardroom last week, people say, with all the talk from solid minerals minister, I said, you see, talk does not grow economies. You know, talk is cheap. So nothing is happening. So that's 0.92. This is manufacturing minus 2.85. This is construction minus 0.45. This is trade minus 1.74. This is transport minus 6.25. This is telecoms minus 4.48. This is hotels and restaurants 0.18. This is finance and insurance minus 5.96. Real estate minus 4.12. Professionals, people like me, minus 1.38. Administrative and support services 0.68. Government itself minus 0.72. Education minus 1.22. Health and social services minus 0.85. And even arts, entertainment, and recreation barely grows at 0.44. That's the reality of the Nigerian economy as of the end of third quarter 2016, which is the last available data that the country has. These are the sectors by size. And this is manufacturing. Again, a similar picture. If you break down manufacturing into its top components, they all struggle, all below the line. There is supposed to be space up here for those going, but they are not growing. This is oil refining. This is cement. This is food, beverage, and tobacco, textile, wood and wood products, etc. So the economy should have shown you the good. Recession is over. The bad, it's about oil. The rest of us are still in recession. This government spokesman won't tell you that. I also want to balance the doing business, where we move from 169 to 145. This is the global competitive index. And I've not bothered with the global top 10 and all of that because there's no point looking at Singapore and Norway and US and Germany. But this is the African top 10. Mauritius, Rwanda, South Africa, Botswana, Morocco, Algeria, Namibia, Kenya, Tunisia, Egypt. If you did a second top 10, we still won't be there. We're number 27 in Africa in terms of competitiveness. So if you want to reconcile the former data, yes, we did some reforms in 2016 and 17, but they are not yet reflecting in improved competitiveness, which is why our people will say, I don't feel it well. We don't agree with you. And the problems are still the usual suspects. And these are Nigerian businesses who are sampled, and they said infrastructure, FX, access to financing. By next year, of course, this FX will probably not be there again because that has eased a bit, but access to financing, corruption, all of those usual factors. Unemployment. Now that's, those data are tragic in their implications. If you start from 2015, which appeared to be a low point here, unemployment under our old measure, I have three measures here. The old measure has moved from 24 to 40. The new one that removes underemployment has moved from 6 to 18. The ILO measure, which is a much stricter standard, has moved from 2 to 8. The problem is food inflation is still going up. You can speculate about what is driving that. And I've debated with economists and other informed analysts, and people have different sophisticated reasons why food prices are going up. But I have a very simple reason. If you burn farms and kill farmers, food output will go down and food prices will go up. So if you look at the subcomponents of inflation, not just foods, quite a few are still going up. So it's a basket. The basket has come down, but some critical components, particularly food, domestic food, continues to rise. Okay. So we have a balanced view. Recession is over, but many sectors are still in recession. Inflation is down, but critical elements, particularly food, are still going up. And that is why the people, when you say this thing, inflation is down, people say, what are you talking about? Of course, there's also some misunderstanding of what inflation is. Inflation does not mean, inflation coming down does not mean food prices are reducing. It means the rate of increase is not as high as it was. But even then, so what's the outlook? First, budget. So we've seen PMI earlier, which suggests that growth may be better in 2018. The budget suggests that 2018 will be expansionary. There'll be a lot of money. There'll be a lot of spending. And you can see this here. Total budget size proposed as of now, 8.6 trillion, up from 7.4 trillion, a 16% increase, significant. Revenue assumptions are aggressive, 5 trillion to 6.6 trillion, a 1.6 trillion increase in the projected spending. There's a 2 trillion deficit. You may also assume that the oil benchmark price of 45 will be raised by the National Assembly to a minimum of 50. So either the spending will be increased or the deficit will be reduced, depending on how they used to apply that increase. But clearly, this is a very aggressive spending year, and it's about politics. Of course, this is an election year, and the government would seek to placate Nigerians through spending. And that's going to happen. So this is the consistent increase in spending in the last 3 years in Naira terms. In dollar terms, it's also, this is the first year in which it's actually a big jump, even in dollar terms, because now the exchange rate is not depreciating, and there's an aggressive growth in Naira terms. So this is a $4 billion increase in spending, which is significant. If you look back, all of these years, even though we are increasing Naira spending, the dollar amount was not changing. And our biggest budget in dollar terms was actually in 2010, in the last decade. So, like I said, the revenue assumptions are quite aggressive if you look on a line-by-line basis, and probably unrealistic as well. But in the context of 2018, we're going to spend that money. At the worst, we're going to borrow more than we plan to borrow. Debt servicing is becoming a major issue. 25% of budget, almost 40% of revenue. And in terms of actual budget performance, if you look at the last 2 years, between 50 to 60% of revenue, actual revenue. So we're building up a debt crisis for the future. My interpretation has been that we'll spend the money in 2018 and 2019, but we'll account for the accounting, the reckoning will be in 2020 plus. But clearly there's a fiscal sustainability issue building up in Nigeria. Again, now you see one slide that makes that clear. Where are we going to spend the money This is the current side. There's even an increase in the current expenditure, which is suggestive of possibly budgeting for a wage increase, which also supports the possibility that this year is going to be expansionary. The people will have to feel good in the context of an election year. So there will be money in circulation, which can be good for you, at least in the short term. Where are we going to spend money? On the capital side, mostly the biggest chunks are power works and housing and transport. Then you have all these more modest ones in agri, defense, education, all of health, all of them. I don't need to show this. So I spoke about fiscal sustainability, so that's debt servicing over the budget and over revenues, increasing dramatically. And this is the worrying slide. So this is the point at which we cleared our debts in 2006, the Paris Club. And this is where foreign external debt was essentially almost zeroed out. But we're back to the pre-Paris Club debt level, and domestic debt has multiplied dramatically. So like I said earlier, we're building up a fiscal sustainability issue going forward. Politics, the blocks, the APC, presumed winner, the score around the president, the Fasholas and Opeyemis and co, Amechi, Okorocha, Oshomole. I say hashtag RCCG Park because it's a block in the APC now. There is a pivot to bring back the South-South and the Southeast. And there's a hashtag bring back Asiwaju Bola Tinubu. And that's basically the APC platform for 2019. They are still pondering, but they don't have many options. That's the Southwest APC under Tinubu. PDP appears a bit re-energized after getting rid of Modu Sharif. But they need to readmit the Middle Belt and the Southwest. The Middle Belt, the prospects are stronger. The Southwest is still mixed. And then there are parts of the APC, which I still call New PDP, because their soul is in PDP, their bodies are in APC. Saraki and Co. And it's not clear where they will be. And then there's a third force around NIM and Co. and Afenifere and those kind of people. Where will they be? So those are the platforms. Nobody knows the outcomes, but we can pick out the platforms and understand how and interpret for ourselves. And the president's strategy is what I call the 4 R's. Reconciliation with Asiwaju, rapprochement, Southeast, South-South. They were there in the villa yesterday. And I'd written this before then. Rewards, okay, board appointments. So that's part of why money will flow in 20. So we've done 1,000. There's still more. Cabinet shuffle where may come. And then retribution for the opponents, those who insist on going like Atiku, potentially like Kwakwanso and other people. So that's the field of play. Now, what will all of this, we have, and I can leave you to make your choice as to where we are. But basically, Nigeria, in the last, from 2016, has been playing with 3 broad scenarios. A status quo of 2016 that was about recession or low growth, in which we had low FDI. Oil price was between $40 to $50 per barrel. FX was volatile, and we were unclear about policy, and investor confidence was down. That's the recession scenario, or low growth scenario. It is probable that we're heading in the second scenario, not because of policy changes, but because of oil prices. So growth may be between 2 and 4%, as we started with. We have the ELGP, which we are marginally executing in 2 areas. We've done some ease of doing business, which has done some good results. And we also did FX liquidity, even though it is oil price that made that sustainable. So we have an oil price driven better, as we have seen, in terms of where the economy is. So the question is diffusion. Will it diffuse into other parts of the economy? My bet is that through the budget, through spending, political spending, all of that, there will be increased diffusion of growth into non-oil sectors in 2018. And then there's this scenario which we should keep a view of, even though it seems remote right now. But the most probable triggers for this scenario are politics and maybe financial sector. Politics being most prominent, but we played with this last year when the president was abroad and sick, and maybe if he had died, we could have played with this. Why are you laughing? He's a human being. We are all human beings. So, but we deferred it once he recovered, and now it's 2019 that can give us that scenario. So you can select for yourself where you think, but you should keep these scenarios in mind. So, for instance, if you hear oil prices drop to $40 per barrel, most probably we could be back to a recession. Yeah. Yes. Most probably, or at least things will get back into a near recession. And that's the representation in graphical terms of those 3 scenarios. We were here, the purple line, the status quo, just struggling under 2%. I think we moved here, not yet on the upper line, but somewhere in between the two. So things are getting better. The problem is structurally is driven by oil rather than policy. Implications for business, broad implications. I'm sure my time is almost up. So let me begin to round up. So global growth has improved modestly. The US is growing at 3.5. The Trump effect. Many big economies that were in recession like us have exited recession, notably Brazil and Russia. And all of that is leading to commodity prices increasing. So that's what's driving oil, amongst other factors. Oil prices beyond $70 per barrel. So better. So I have this purist view, which I should put on record. So apart from the fact that we get more revenues from oil, but we create a problem with the downstream. Beyond that, I have this, and there's some historical evidence for the fact that oil-producing nations, their governments misbehave when oil prices are high. So when I say oil prices are high, and it's a good thing, note that my qualification. But for a hungry man, you can't say it's better for you not to eat, so that you won't misbehave. So it's better the recession is over. So we take it as a good thing. 2 key areas of positive impact. In terms of policy, I've mentioned that the doing business reforms and the greater FX liquidity, which has been aided by oil prices. PMI generally suggests a better outlook, and we can't deny the positive macro elements: oil price, production volumes, moderating inflation. We note the exception to domestic food, higher FX reserves, stable FX rate, rising PMIs, and modest enhancements in capital flow. So those are positive, and they suggest a better macro outlook in 2018. The Niger Delta is critical in this scenario. This is an election season. It's more prone to insecurity. And so even then, in spite of high oil prices, the revenue is oil price times oil production. We've kept the Niger Delta quiet in 2017. So we've got increased revenues because both factors have moved up. So we still have a challenge of keeping the Niger Delta quiet, even now, especially in the context of an election season. Risks with the Niger Delta, risks with politics, This with global oil prices, and of course, we haven't done much of the substantive reforms in the oil and gas sector. It's very good news that the PIGB passed in the House of Reps a few days ago. Let's hope the president signs it and we'll take that off the table, and then we'll do other petroleum industry bills. And one message which increasingly I make, you know, Nigeria is becoming a dual economy. You know, the federal government did a budget of 8 trillion, or is proposing a budget of 8 trillion. If you strip it of the over-optimism, you have essentially a budget of 6 trillion. The Lagos State is 1 trillion. Lagos State is 20% of Nigeria's GDP. Lagos State is 50% of Nigeria's financial sector. Guess what? You can focus. You are in Lagos. You can make money in Lagos, even if Nigeria is not doing as well as it should. So that's, let me run through an arbitrary list of opportunities, just because I felt I'm talking to entrepreneurs, let it all be theory, Abby. So generally, I mean, first of all, as an entrepreneur, yeah, you are not in the oil sector, but expect some diffusion. So you can be a bit more optimistic. Expect some diffusion of these effects into other sectors. I mean, real estate, construction. Government will, you know, when government is happy, real estate does well. You know, you understand the linkage. And construction too does well. Hotels and restaurants does well. You know, I mean, it's when government is doing contracts that people stay in hotels in Abuja and so on. So we, the economists, we can be worrying about fiscal sustainability. You worry about getting some of the money, you know, into your business. Then the oil sector, of course, procurement. The oil sector itself was a large part of procurement in Nigeria, and they're becoming more viable. The upstream oil sector. The tragedy is that as oil prices rise, the downstream oil sector becomes troubled because of the subsidy. And they cannot trade. They leave it to any, so they're idle.